Funding for Elwood City Limits is brought to you by Leanne S., John DuLong, and Josias Melendez, listeners like you. Become a supporter of the podcast today at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. Funding for Elwood City Limits is brought to you by Facebook,
Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits,
Twitter,
@ECL Podcast,
Tumblr,
ElwoodCityLimits.tumblr.com,
email,
ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com,
and by contributions from listeners like you.
literally at ElwoodCityLimits.libsyn.com.
Thank you.
Cha-ching, cha-ching, baby.
Lucas, you can't see this, right?
No, I do not believe this is a video connection.
So you can't see what I'm doing?
No, this is getting a little strange, but I cannot see anything right now.
Well, if you could see what I'm doing right now, I'm so angry and frustrated that I've clenched my hand, what they call a fist, and I have placed that fist at about belt level, at about hip level.
Okay.
And in the universal sign of mimetic frustration.
If only we had Google video calling, and much like Chrissy Teigen, I could see that your fist is clenched, but unfortunately, this is just a Skype call. I can only see it in the theater of the mind, Will.
Maybe that's how we should start all of our podcasts. We should just start, how it goes. There's our Patreon, there's our cold open, then there's the theme song, and we should just both start with us going, Arthur! It's direct and to the point.
Yeah, that would never get old. And
yeah, it's well, I must admit I'm not actually frustrated. I'm actually in a pretty good mood because we're here to record another episode of Elwood City Limits, and I hope you feel the same, Lucas.
Oh, I am rearing to go. It's a lovely Wednesday, and it's getting topped off and made all the much better by watching an episode of Arthur. So let's get into it.
That's right. Welcome to Elwood City Limits. This is Will Young coming at you. We're into Season 4, so if this is your first episode, welcome. We're happy to have you. And that's my co-host, Lucas Mancini.
Hello.
So, we are in the first episode of Season 4. Very exciting. And, of course, if you couldn't tell from that hint at the beginning of the episode, it's a big one that we're talking about here, and we're going to get into it all. Of course, it would hardly be an episode these days if we didn't have a piece of email, and we do over at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. So before we get into all that, we're throwing it over to Yoshi at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. Yoshi wishes us well. First wants to say Yoshi has 2 points. One, Wally, George's puppet from a few episodes ago, appears many times throughout Arthur, starting around Season 6. She's not sure what the hiatus is, but we will see more of Wally. More of Wally is to come.
You don't know what you got till it's gone. Distance makes the heart grow fonder, and they knew they had to just keep Wally from us, so we'd be begging for them to bring him back.
And the second thing is Yoshi went to elementary school in California, and they had milk bags.
So, Will, am I to understand that we're getting conflicting reports in regards to the milk bag? Because I was taking a look at our Facebook DMs at the Elwood City Limits Facebook page, and I was reading reports quite the contrary, that there was someone saying there was absolutely no milk bags in the United States.
Yeah, it's where a report has just slid across my desk. Great controversy as to the
milk bag sitch.
Yeah, the milk bag situation. Okay, here's something for you. Last time you went grocery shopping, did you see any milk bags? Do we still sell milk in bags here in Canada, or is
yes.
that?
Yeah, no, we definitely still have milk bags. Yeah,
okay, very good. I may not even notice them at this point, so just wanted to make sure that we indeed do. Yoshi says it was the talk of the playground when the lunchroom made the switch from cartons maybe around 4th grade, which was 2002. Why did they think bags were better?
Wait a minute. Is Yoshi referring to like individual sized milk bags? Like a Slurpee, but with milk inside? Because cartons for a lunch are like individual single serving cartons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I mean, maybe it was noticeable when they would. You know what the short answer is? I don't know. I can't imagine a milk bag being like personal size. That seems very strange to me.
Well, the milk bag rabbit hole just gets deeper.
You thought we dug ourselves some holes with animal hierarchy and where Elwood City Limits is? No, we're getting lost in milk bags.
Just when I thought we would never have the answers to such great questions like, is Arthur's dad a Republican? Now we have this whole milk bag thing to tussle with.
Yoshi says, keep on keeping on, and sorry about the NBA, Lucas.
I don't want to talk about...
Okay, that's okay. We don't have to. I have something else that I want us to talk about. It's this article that I came across. You know, I have a Google alert on anytime something new in Arthur comes up in a Google search, and I was directed to an article that was just published about Arthur characters if they went to UC Berkeley in California.
It's oddly specific.
Yeah, it's an interesting read on www.dailycal.com.
Daily Cal.
It's actually called the Daily Clog, a Cal blog by the Daily Californian. So this is we're talking about regional humor when it comes to our weather. This is as regional as it gets. But some interesting general observations here from the person who wrote this article. That would be. The author's name is Sunny Sichi.
Of course, their name is Sunny. They're in California.
Sunny says Arthur would be an English major.
Yep, that's with a bullet.
Buster would be a nutritional sciences and toxicology major and would also teach baking. There's a lot of references to like things around UC Berkeley that I'm afraid I don't understand. Francine would play Division I women's soccer and would major in molecular and cell biology, hoping to go into sports medicine if she doesn't end up making the U.S. women's soccer team. I got to say, that is a really, really good, specific Francine character imagine right there.
Yeah, I would say that in more ways than one, Hope Solo of the U.S. American soccer team is a real Francine counterpart in personality and in athletic skill. Does the article perchance say which Arthur character smokes the most weed?
No, it's pretty all ages here. They do not go into that. I'll just finish this up quickly. The brain gets into EECS, which is electrical engineering and computer science. Muffy is a business major, which makes sense. DW being, and this is a quote here, being the queen of arguments, DW would be a political science major.
God help us all. Could you imagine?
Hoping to run for president someday. Well, hey, the bar for president is pretty darn low these days, and and who knows? Maybe DW, even from a young age, she knew that she had to figure out where she stood on the issues. She couldn't just get in there from popularity alone.
She won't be able to use the excuse, but I'm just a child anymore, unfortunately, but I'm sure she'll adapt.
It's going to wring that one dry. Anyway, just wanted to make sure that we talked about that real quick. It's an imaginative article. And if you found any other Arthur-type articles that are weirdly specific for your region, or if you just want to send us an email, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com is the way to go.
Did you have bagged milk? Let us know.
Yeah, actually. Bagged milk. Let's keep it going. Want to know your thoughts and your experiences. So this is indeed the first episode of Season 4. I know I've said that a bunch of times by this point. So Season 4 takes place in 1999. That's when the production schedule kind of happened. And we do have one major casting change to Arthur at this point, which we will get into very shortly. This first story we're talking about is DW's library card. It starts off with
now,
Arthur.
Will,
yeah.
It's funny you mentioned a casting change, because my first note on this episode is DW's voice sound different, question mark?
And there it is. You got it exactly right. Goodbye, farewell to Michael Kalos as DW. The new actor is Oliver Granger. So this is DW's new voice for a couple of seasons.
It's interesting because when I watched Arthur, it was in syndication already. So I didn't necessarily watch them in linear order like we are today, with this podcast. And what's interesting is, as a kid, I guess kids are just less discerning overall, but I don't think I ever noticed a difference between the old episodes and the new episode and DW's voice acting. So I didn't know this was coming. I was very surprised.
I definitely didn't know when it was going to happen, and truth be told, I did forget about it a bit as well. So it was a surprise to me too, especially, I apologize if you if this is part of your point, Lucas. It's just that, we are doing the deepest of deep dives on Arthur, so I feel like I know these voices like the back of my hand at this point. So whenever there is the slightest change to what I'm expecting, then it sticks out immediately.
No, yeah, and it's almost to the point where, for me, I kind of got a little bit distracted with parts of this episode, because I'm sure I'll get used to it. I'm sure, what was his name, Oliver, does a fine job. It's just something I have to get used to for now.
Absolutely. So DW is bothering Arthur at the library as he's talking about all the things to love about the library, which is true. She's trying to get him to very incrementally read the title of the book she's reading, which is The Red Dog. And Arthur's going on this whole thing about, the best thing about the library is it's quiet, and, points to a no talking sign. But I have to call BS on this, because they talk in the library all the time.
That's true. But, I mean, the idea is you're supposed to be quiet. It's pretty rude to be screaming in a library. And
you would think through this whole cold open that one of them would get shushed by somebody else, and I was just waiting for it to happen, but it doesn't. It's just at the end when Arthur is, talking, and he tells DW to be quiet, then DW comes back and says, "The sign says no talking."
There's also a really great moment where when DW's trying to get him to read The Red Dog, Arthur says, "Don't you see the sign that says no talking?" And DW claps back. Again, that political science know-how. She claps back immediately with, "If I can't read the title of that book, how am I going to be able to read that sign?"
DW's logic is sound. It carries, and it's Arthur's fault for not picking up the pieces there. So she is within her rights. The actual episode also starts in the library. DW is reading about Chopin, the composer, with Binky. Binky says one of my favorite words in the English language. That would be rondo. Talking about one of Chopin's compositions.
When you hear rondo, what's the first thing you think of?
I have a feeling it's going to be the same thing. I believe it's Castlevania.
4,
Rondo of Blood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What is a man but a miserable pile of secrets? I don't think I knew Rondo was a something to do with symphonies. Well, it makes sense because almost all Castlevania games have a musical related thing in their subtitle.
Yeah.
Symphony of the Night, Rondo of Blood,
Aria of Sorrow.
Aria of Sorrow. What's an aria? But regardless,
it's an opera term.
Oh, okay. But so I think that's how I figured out what a rondo was, and the only other time I've ever heard the term rondo was in reference to Castlevania.
Arthur almost catches Binky reading a book about a composer, and then he quickly puts a karate magazine in front of it, and
it's a comic, I think, starring Karate Koala.
Okay. DW says, Binky was teaching me about Chopin. And Binky's like, his name's not Chopin. His name is Chopin. And he's a karate master. You weren't paying attention. So, very good save. This whole episode I shouldn't say this whole episode, but at least the inciting incident for what happens here is what happens next. DW spots a book on a cart and wants Arthur to borrow it for her. But then this is one of the inciting kind of conflict that leads us to the point of the episode. Arthur refuses to take out a book called Hop Along the Frog on his account because then he's afraid his account will be flagged and that he can only from that point on, he'll only be able to take out baby books. And we get this whole detailed imagination about how, like, they basically sound the alarm on Arthur, they lock him in the library, and it's just like, sorry, Arthur, you can only take out baby books.
Arthur's dream sequences, especially when they involve the librarian, are like, they remind me of the movie Brazil. Like, this authoritarian librarian with, like, oh, that rhymed. That's a good, for you rappers out there, you can steal that one. But they always have these contraptions. Like, I had flashbacks to the episode where the long arm of the law got Arthur, and the crank, like, dragged Arthur back to the library. There's always these giant, like, Pee Wee Herman-esque contraptions. And in this case, in Arthur's imagination, he gets dressed as a baby by these animatronic arms, and then they also take a Polaroid photograph of him just to add insult to injury. And then when we get back to reality, Arthur has a really great line where he's explaining why he's not going to take out Hopple on the Frog, and he says, the stakes are just too... He says, there's just too much at stake, DW.
Which is hilarious because this is one of the most low-stakes episodes of Arthur we've encountered yet. Like, my exact note was here, I said, okay, Arthur, your anxiety is getting stupid. We know, it's been well documented that, nobody wants to look like a baby. That's one of the big slurs of Arthur, and that Arthur worries about things, and trust me, I get worrying about things that will never happen. But this was just a bridge too far for me. This was ridiculous.
It really hit home when it's coming out of the fantasy sequence, and we hear the word baby, like echo.
Yeah. Miss Turner's baby books quote is really echoing. And and then we also hear like Arthur's a baby, yeah. So of course this isn't meant to be an accurate reflection of reality or anything, but it's just like we've had Arthur worry about better things, let's say. And I feel like there was a better way for us to get into the actual meat of this episode, which is that DW says that one day she'll have her own library card and she'll be able to take out books whenever she wants. In fact, she brings it up immediately after when she goes to a Mr. Ratburn puppet show, which is kind of funny. In Miss Turner asks, like, does anybody have any questions? And the DW's like, when can we get our own library card? And I guarantee you that puppet show was not about library cards at all. The big twist here is that DW can't get a library card unless she's able to write her own name. And DW, of course, can't read, which means that she definitely can't write. And there's a quick throwaway gag. We really got to come up with something here of like Simpsons type gags, because I was
just gonna say this is totally a Simpsons gag.
It is, but I feel like we maybe point that out a bit too much. So maybe at this point we just have to admit that sometimes the Arthur writers can achieve Simpsons levels of humor. Like, let's
just say it's a Simpsons type gag, aka what's hereby known as a good joke.
You know what? I'm gonna maybe I'll have to look for like a good joke drop or something. I'll have to think about that one. But yes, good joke here, as the Tibbles say. It's not so bad. At least DW's name isn't Aloysius Zimmerplatz. And then pan over to the other end of the table. This especially nerd-looking guy is trying to write his own name on a piece of paper, and then he just goes, "Oh no, I ran out of room again."
He could only fit the first three letters of Zimmerplatz in. It was he got Aloysius, but then he got to Z-I-M.
And he looks like an Aloysius Zimmerplatz. He's got like tight orange hair, these yellow square spectacles, and like a red jacket. Like, if Aloysius Zimmerplatz had an Instagram now, he'd be famous.
Aloysius Zimmerplatz is really close to, it reminded me of another gag from Superbad where Jonah Hill is saying, do you want me to eat lunch by myself like Steven Glansberg? And then it hard cuts to Steven Glansberg eating lunch by himself.
It's you saying that also reminds me of a gag, of kind of a similar gag from The Tick, of like every once in a while they would go, at least he's not as bad as lower back pain, man. And it just cuts to this guy who is doubled over in like a superhero costume, and his catchphrase was, "I'll be okay in a minute." I love lower back pain, man. So I wrote at this point, this episode feels like it's going by in a flash. We are not even 5 minutes in, and we've had like, okay, so Arthur's at the library. He's afraid of taking out a book because he doesn't want to be seen as a baby. So DW is going to get her own library card, but she can't write her own name. And it feels like we're like throwing a lot of stuff at the viewer.
Well, yeah, both of these episodes, I think this is just an example of how quickly these episodes seem to fly by, is that I have about 20 notes written for the comedy. Like, usually I have about 3 pages of notes written down for the 2 episodes. I have barely a page and a half this time. And it's not to say that we'll get into final judgments later on in the show, but both of these episodes are just brisk with the pace.
Mm-hmm. DW spends some time at the kitchen table with some paper and a pencil just trying to write her own name, but it's not coming very easily. And then by the end of the day, the best she's able to muster, as Arthur says, is Dopa Minifred Reapid. DW is very dejected at dinner and is kind of fiddling around with her mashed potatoes, and somehow there's no real like change here other than the fact that she practiced a bunch and didn't seem to get it. She's able to write Dora Winifred in her mashed potatoes, and then Dad gives her some more mashed potatoes, and she's able to write her full name in the mashed potatoes and without much changing in between scenes. It's
in the mashed potatoes. It's like DW's in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, next she's going to be...
holds up the mashed potatoes. What does this look like to you?
And then she has a great line here that says, "Look out, world, DW Reed writes." The whole anxiety that she's going through at this point is that she needs to be able to write her own name when she goes up to get her own library card, and the Tibbles predict she's totally going to brick it. So she's like, we're playing the tense music. She's like panicking as she goes up to the table. She's afraid she'll forget her own name. And I just wrote down, this feels really low stakes, even if I was a kid. Like, it's just
true, but I kind of got a kick out of it. Like, it almost wrapped around for me where this is almost so cartoonish and insane. The fact that, like, because you and I both know if she can't write her name, like, they're still going to give her the library card if she just wrote DW.
Yeah.
And especially because it's not like she's, like, signing a form or anything. She's signing the back of the card, because when she signs the card, spoilers, she signs the card, she does it properly, the librarian takes it and hands it back to her immediately.
Yeah, really. And she does it right the first time, so she had nothing to worry about. So DW gets her own library card. Arthur meme alert here, one that I saw very recently, actually. DW kind of cradles the card and gets an evil look on her face, and she says, "Now I know what true power feels like." Definitely, I think even on at ECL Podcast on Twitter, I think we retweeted that in the last week. So DW is very excited, and now she can borrow Hop Along the Frog at her leisure. So DW wants to borrow Hop Along the Frog at this point, but it seems to be out until next Saturday, so she has to wait an agonizing week to get her hands on the book. And there's a quick little montage of like Miss Turner being essentially bothered by DW at all hours as to when the book comes in. I'll note here, Miss Turner eating her lunch at the main desk. That's there's no like staff room she can go to or somebody to relieve her?
Yeah, where are all the other employees at this library? My mom works at a library, and it's a multi-person job, but it seems like Miss Turner, she's shushing people. And when she's out there shushing people, who's at the front desk? I guess it's all the animatronic arms.
So finally, we get to Saturday. DW wakes up Arthur, and she says, "Arthur, wake up. Tomorrow's today, and today is yesterday."
And then she hands him this great, it looks like Fruity Pebbles or something, this great-looking bowl of cereal.
That's Crunch cereal, dog.
Oh, of course. How could I forget? I feel like last time we saw Crunch cereal, though, it looked like Corn Pops. It was all just beige. But
yeah.
This is like the Oops All Berry version of Crunch cereal.
Maybe it's like Munch cereal, where it's that's when it's multicolored.
Oh.
That would be, see, that again, that idea is for free. Lucas has got the rhymes. I've got the advertising know-how.
Together we're unstoppable.
I wrote a note here especially. I can't remember if there was any particular line. I think it was actually during, so they go to the library and the book hasn't been returned yet because Miss Turner says it might be late. And it was at this point that, no disrespect to Oliver Granger, DW's new voice actor, but I wrote the note. I think DW's new voice actually makes her more annoying, which is too bad because, like, as we discovered in the first 3 seasons of this show, we love DW, and her voice is her voice is a big way in which she kind of got over with us, and right now it's kind of, she feels a little bit more, I'm trying to describe kind of how it sounds. I think she almost sounds more like a little boy than Michael Kalos did as DW.
There's definitely, I totally see that, what you're saying. It's I wouldn't say it's more masculine, but she does sound more like a little boy. Though I will say, I feel like I was starting to get used to it by the end of Arthur's big hit. Mm-hmm. Like, with this episode in particular, it really stood out. And I'm not sure if it's just like, maybe this was the first episode Oliver recorded, and so he wasn't so used to delivering the DW voice. Or it could just be that we weren't used to it yet. But as Arthur's big hit went along, I started to be less and less bothered by it.
Yeah, I think it'll just take time for me. Like, I was just used to, 2 straight years of Michael Kalos' DW. It's going to take a little bit for Oliver Granger to warm up to me, so no disrespect intended. DW thinks she sees somebody returning the book at some point, and I love how the shot of her using her library card like a police officer. Like, the name's DW Reed. What's the book you got there? And then the Tibbles are actually the ones who are returning Hop Along the Frog.
Right. So what was the book? There was a bait and switch. It was like Choo Choo Chuck or something?
Chippy the Choo Choo.
I love, something I like in this episode that I like what Arthur does all the time is all the fake books.
Yeah.
Like Hop Along the Frog, Tibby Choo Choo, whatever his name is. All the fake books and fake book covers are very creative and fun.
Yeah, I agree. They always have kind of fun with that, and those actually seem very believable. So DW sees that they have brought the book back, and then she also sees that the book is kind of like cracked and stuff on the cover, but Miss Turner says it's an old book, so she needs to be very careful with it. And the Tibbles again tease her that if she destroys the book, they'll take away her library card forever. There's a quick
Which is not true, by the way.
No, I imagine not. You would probably
someone once brought in a book in my mom's library, and the book's edges were burnt, and she was like, "How did this happen?" And the lady was like, "Oh, I put it in the oven." And my mom was like, "Why?" And she was like, "To get all the germs off it."
Ugh.
So that lady still has her library card.
Wow. Okay. So I don't know. These liberal Canadian libraries might be different than the U.S. library system, but
that's right. We don't have pulleys and levers and contraptions that'll chain you to a desk and dress you like a baby.
So DW has this dream sequence where she like accidentally rips off the cover of Hop Along the Frog, and then like it just disintegrates, and she.
The surprise of which, because we don't know it's a dream sequence until this happens, right? It's DW sits down, she gets ready to rip off the cover of Hop Along the Frog, and much like the Donald Glover "This Is America" video, quickly shocks us by DW ripping the cover square off. And at this point, I still thought this was real, and I was like, oh my god. But no, we quickly realize it's a dream sequence as the rest of the book disintegrates.
This is the library. Don't catch you slipping. No.
Oh no.
That's the most I'll do. Yeah, and then it gets into this like where DW is like on trial in this cavern almost, where Miss Turner is yelling at her, "You can never have another library card again," and puts like a big red X on her card. And DW is like, "No, I worked so hard for it," and it's being very melodramatic as the Tibbles go by saying "more books for us." My favorite part of this is how she imagines Arthur. Yes, he's just this towering over her, just laughing in the fakest way. He's just, "Whoa, ha, ha, ha. I told you you'd never get a library card. I told you." Like, it's great.
Arthur sounds like a character from like Dark Souls or Bloodborne or something. Like how they're always kind of laughing at you no matter what you do. Like, "Oh, a hunter." Huh. Huh. Huh.
And DW, and I mean, similar to the depressing visuals in those Souls games, DW just collapses in tears saying, "It's not fair. It's not fair." It's pretty sad. So she is very, very afraid to barely even touch Hopalong the Frog. So she just waits out the week that she has it before she has to return it because she just doesn't want to lose her library card.
Yeah, she's got it wrapped in a blanket in a box that she's defusing a bomb. She opens the box with oven mitts on.
And then the day before she's supposed to bring it back, or rather on the morning she's supposed to bring it back on the Saturday, Arthur kind of talks to her about it, and she's so afraid that, and she confides in him how afraid she is to even touch it. She doesn't want to lose her library card, even though Arthur assures her that won't happen. He offers to open the book for her, and I will say this is probably my favorite part of the episode, where Arthur looks in the card in the back of the library book and realizes that Hopalong the Frog is the first ever book that he took out of the library when he was DW's age.
This is where you have to kind of suspend your disbelief for a little bit, because I also remember when those cards got put in there, and they only had them at my school library, at my elementary school. And those cards would get replaced quite often because kids were taking out books left and right. So I could hardly see a public library still having the same card for back when Arthur was a kid. And also, he only just now remembered that Hopalong the Frog was his first book. I know, it's a fun little moment, but it's a little sus.
Yeah, I agree. It's you got to really suspend the disbelief there.
I mean, dare I say, I almost feel like a jerk saying this because, again, it's for children, but yeah, I found it a little bit hokey.
Yeah, I'm not gonna fight you on that one. It's cute, but definitely doesn't make a whole lot of sense in the story. It did remind me of those days when you had to fill out the card in the back, which seems like ancient history now. I also like the imagination of Arthur as a little kid just going, my first book. I thought that was cute. And then the episode ends with DW. She's sad that she has to return the book because she loved it so much, but then Arthur reminds her that she can renew it. So DW goes back to the library, renews the book, and says she's going to renew it again and again and again, and Arthur's going to have to read it to her every night. No word from us kids for this episode, so we're just getting... Okay, wow, I can't believe it. We've been building it up for so long, and now we're finally here. It's Arthur's big hit. Maybe one of the most popular and well-known Arthur episodes ever.
I wonder what the word from us kids was going to be for this episode. Like, was it just like, hey kids, we're going to fight each other today?
It must have had something to do with
library cards? Yeah.
Library cards.
It wouldn't be like, all right kids, let's hop in the octagon.
Yeah. No, definitely not. So just for a little context here, in case you have been off the internet for the last 2 years and have just discovered this Elwood City Limits podcast, the reason this episode is so popular is because of the Arthur Fist meme, Arthur's Fist. And I'm getting all my information here from knowyourmeme.com. It's the shot of Arthur with the clenched fist at kind of like hip level to quote-unquote describe various infuriating or frustrating circumstances. And from later in this episode, the meme started in a Twitter post from user @almostjt on July 27th, 2016. I'll give you an example here. The spread of the Arthur meme came around the same time, the same year as Harambe.
Oh my gosh. Well, let me tell you this. The Arthur fist clench meme is certainly more evergreen than Harambe has been.
So evergreen, in fact, that just this last November, LeBron James posted a picture of Arthur's fist to his Instagram account.
Oh, LeBron James.
And then, of course, it went even further viral in the John Legend commercial that we talked about in last week's episode.
Thank goodness. I thought we were going to talk about LeBronto, and I'm glad to just move on to nice with John Legend. Oh, thank goodness.
Just getting the info out there. So I Don't want to dwell on it for longer than we have to. So yeah, it's spread. I'm certain that you've seen some degree of it. Maybe you've even made one of the memes yourself, in which case, send that to us. I'd like to see it. But yeah, it's crazy. And in a kind of a roundabout way, it was when this meme became popular along with other Arthur memes that kind of helped us decide, well, maybe we should think about doing this Arthur podcast. Maybe the time is right. Because July 2016, we would have been in the planning stages of doing Elwood City Limits.
You know, when you put it like that, I never realized that were it not for Arthur punching DW, there might not even be Elwood City Limits or a podcast or anything like that.
Yeah.
We owe it to this episode.
Yeah, we do, actually. That's a great point. Yeah, my gosh, when you put it that way, this episode, maybe one of the most important Arthur episodes out there. I mean, not to say that we're, super important or anything like that, but, we are a piece, what would you call it? An Arthur companion. And we certainly wouldn't be here without that. And I feel like Arthur wouldn't have the name recognition that he has today without, at least in part, to this meme. So for all of you who kept it going these last 2 years, thank you very much. But the episode is indeed Arthur's big hit. And beyond the fist meme, it starts with Arthur and DW getting ready to do a kind of like celebrity boxing. They're getting ready to duke it out in the ring. Finally, we're going to see these two icons clash.
We're truly at the, what is it? The something of the Immortals? The
showcase.
The showcase of the Immortals. No, there's like so many things I have to say about this. So people talk so much about the fist clenching meme. I had forgotten about all this stuff. They're getting ready to go to this boxing ring. Arthur's getting his mouth guard put in. DW's entrance involves her biking to guitar riffs down this giant like New Japan ramp. And then she gets to the ring. This is just
DW doing the Shawn Michaels Mania 12 entrance, basically.
This whole thing, like, you know me, Will, this whole thing is awesome. I was way into all of this. I also thought it was kind of crazy that they decided to sort of represent the conflict in this episode like a boxing match. Something about it's just a little odd, considering DW is like a little girl. But it's a fantasy world, and I was kind of into it.
And they both have kind of boxing robes on with insignia, or logo, I should say. And DW's logo is like a pony, and I love Arthur's. It just has a book on the back of his robe. Francine is the referee / ring announcer as they do their entrances. Buster is Arthur's corner man, and Nadine is that for DW. There's a gag where they both have like mouth guards put in, and Arthur goes, "Prepare to lose" to DW, but because he's got the mouth guard in, they have to put up subtitles. DW can't understand him. Then she looks directly at the camera and says, and kind of points to the subtitles and says, "This doesn't help. I can't read." They're getting ready to fight.
That I would go as far as to say was a good joke.
Good joke. I'm still trying to figure out the right touch for the good joke drop. You know what? I'm also going to leave this open. If any of our audio savvy Elwood City Limits listeners wants to contribute their own good joke drop, send it to us by email, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com, and it may just be part of the show going forward. They're both circling each other, getting ready to fight, but then Arthur sees DW eating popcorn in the front row of the audience, and he says, "Two DWs?" Or, "Two DW?" With the mouth guard in. And DW
like
says,
it's a David Lynch movie or something.
Says there's only, they should be talking backwards. You double use.
With the double gangers and the backwards talk, yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. So she says, "Nope, there's only one of me." And then, we go from David Lynch to David Cronenberg here, body horror, as the DW in the ring takes her head off, and it's Binky. And for like a brief couple seconds, it's Binky's face on DW's body as he climbs out of the costume that he's in, climbs out of DW's body and says, "We thought you'd rather pick on somebody your own size." And Arthur says, "That's a good point. You wait here. I'll go and find somebody." And then Binky just chases him around the ring.
It's actually pretty good that we got like a hard cut before Binky like started beating on Arthur, but a part of me kind of wanted to see that.
Yeah. It's, of course, they have to skate around the whole violence thing because they're going to use up their entire violence quota in just a short little while. The start of this episode is that Arthur has a new project with Mr. Ratburn's class that he has to build a model plane, out of an actual model kit. And I actually had to do this as a project when I was in grade 7.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. In retrospect, it was pretty cool, but I remember the model plane being really difficult to build. It was like you had to use a certain type of glue. You had to sand down parts. It was a lot of work.
Lego, this is not. No, I have a friend who is getting into building model Gundams, and it's not quite, I don't know if it's quite hobby grade model plane level, but I know it's far more simple than snapping A to B to C. It's, far more difficult. You have to really know what you're doing.
Yeah, big times. You guys, so your friend's getting into Gunpla?
Gunpla, excuse me. How could I be so mistaken? Yes, you are correct.
So Arthur is explaining this to DW, and we already kind of get the idea that she's pestering him because he keeps telling her to leave his room so he can work on it, and she's just kind of dragging it out. Comically, though, she's just like, you tell me to go, I'll go. Just like that, I'm gone, baby. That kind of stuff.
She does really say, I'm gone, baby, which is hilarious.
This episode is kind of a first because we get alternate Arthur outfits that we've never seen before. He has kind of different clothes on when he's painting and working on the plane. He's got... in this next one, he's got a green vest on instead of like his yellow sweater. He's got like everything that he normally has, but it's a green vest instead. And DW accidentally knocks over the paint he's using. Then in the next shot, he's showing Buster his progress, and he's got on blue jeans and like a red button-up shirt. He looks like the Brawny Man.
It's just weird that we see, it's 3 different outfits back to back to back. Maybe they're trying to show how long, there's a lot of time passing, and this build is taking a extra long time just to make DW seem that much more annoying and to make Arthur seem that much more invested. But it's kind of weird that we see all these alternative outfits that we've never seen before in such quick succession.
So finally, Arthur finishes the plane. It looks great. It's even got a little stand, and he's very, very proud of himself. This whole time throughout, all of this, DW has been kind of getting into the paint. She's been knocking it over. She got her hands on it, so got her hands wet with paint. Arthur's so proud of himself, he thinks that he's going to win a blue ribbon from NASA and be able to fly his airplane.
Not only is it a blue ribbon from
there's a shot of him.
I think this is Chuck Yeager himself who gives Arthur the blue ribbon.
Oh, really?
Chuck Yeager... famous pilot of the plane that Arthur's building that broke the sound barrier, West Virginia's own.
Oh, very good. I didn't pick up on that. So Arthur kind of, this calls for a victory snack, so he kind of sees himself downstairs. So I got to be honest with you, whenever I would watch this episode when I was little, I was like, oh no, you know what? Actually, now that I think about it, so this whole next thing is where DW sneaks into Arthur's room, she plays with the plane, and then throws it outside because she thinks that it can fly, which model planes, of course, usually can't on their own. I remember when I would watch this episode on PBS, I would flip to another channel until this part was over.
Oh my God.
Because it gave me such anxiety. And I got to be honest with you, watching it again, it still does, because they've got the tense music going. Arthur is completely oblivious as to what DW is doing. He's playing downstairs and imagining all the glory that's going to come, and then the plane falls, and we see the plane fall through outside the window, and it just gives me such anxiety, man. Did it happen for you as well?
I wouldn't necessarily say anxiety, but I think the way it's edited together is very effective at ratcheting up the tension. The whole sequence, including the sort of aftermath of Arthur realizing the plane has fallen, Mayday, Mayday, The whole thing is cut so well, and also like the camera angles they choose, like right after when DW and Arthur are kind of meeting each other outside, the way that the camera's looking up at the building and Arthur to make him seem huge, all that stuff is very effective in eliciting like a tense response in the audience.
I think I mentioned a long time ago that we might have been talking about like Arthur's big hit in some way, and I said that there was an Arthur YouTube poop that I really liked that incorporated it. I did find it.
Oh, you're going to have to send me that. As a YouTube poop historian myself, I must see it. My friends were very fond of the Arthur YouTube poop around the episode where DW swears. That's another classic.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that one. You'll have to trade me. We'll have to swap YouTube poops here. But the one thing I remember from the YouTube poop the most is that, so DW comes down to meet Arthur, and she says, it's like, Arthur, you built your plane all wrong. It doesn't even fly. And Arthur's like, DW, it's not supposed to. And then he catches on and goes, what? And the scene transition is the shot cracking like a picture, like glass.
I wrote this down. The glass shatters. It's like Stone Cold's coming out. They've never used this transition before, but it's like in Yu-Gi-Oh! When someone was mind crushed. They literally use that effect.
Well, and I bring up the YouTube poop because in that video, they make a joke of that scene transition next to a shot from the second opening of Death Note, where Light's face shatters the same way. And it's just it's not something you expect to see in an Arthur episode. It's jarring, and especially because as soon as they go outside, it's become cloudy and it's become windy, and Arthur is just looking at his plane in disbelief. And we get a quick imagination here of Arthur flying the plane, and then suddenly it disappears as he falls to the earth, and it's implied that he dies. Like, Arthur's in a dark headspace right now.
Well, and we go from that to, well, the moment that you've all been waiting for. He just socks her. Just cracks her.
Drum roll, please. Arthur clenches his fist, like he tells her, like he's very angry, just like says, I told you not to touch it, and then just does it, I told you not to touch it, and then punches her. You don't see the contact of the punch, but it's like Arthur rearing back and swinging, and then DW falling to the ground, clutching her shoulder. And
something I had misremembered is that I always thought that he punched her in the mouth in this scene, but I think I was mixing the sort of action from this episode with the after effects of the episode where the Tibbles throw the swing into her face.
Yes.
It turns out he just punches her in the arm, which is far less violent. It turns out this actually lost some of its effect for me because we've already seen worse done to DW.
Yeah, that definitely would hurt her more, but at least I think so. But maybe they're kind of comparable considering their age difference. So DW runs away crying, obviously, and we get to hear Arthur's full name as his mom calls him in, saying, "Arthur Timothy Reed, come here." So his middle name is Timothy, Arthur T. Reed. They call him in. Dad puts a ice pack on DW's shoulder. She's afraid that they're going to amputate her arm. And Mom insists that Arthur apologizes. And this is the big conflict of the episode, is that Arthur doesn't feel sorry for what he did because, and as we were privy to, he even says, like, I told her 1,000,000 times not to touch it. Kind of uses that as, he's still very angry with her and doesn't want to reconcile the fact that, like, he hit her, which is, of course, a bad thing. And in fact, he gets no TV for a week as punishment for doing so, and he makes the point of you're not being even fair to me. You're not even dealing with you didn't even do anything about what DW did to me. And Mom and Dad say, we'll deal with what she did. And in retrospect, they kind of didn't. And this is weird.
I think this is implied that they'll do it off screen. As someone with a sibling, like I'm older than Michaela in a similar way. And I could speak to, in any case, when I would do something similar where me and Michaela are both kind of getting at each other's nerves, but I would do something worse. My parents would use a very similar response where sometimes it's not good to have the kids know each other's punishments because then they're going to be constantly comparing them and be like, well, I only got punished this way, she got punished that way. I think they dealt with it in a better way where they're saying, we'll deal with DW, and I just assumed that the DW conversation was happening off screen.
I agree with you in that, they don't need to know each other's punishment. I think we needed to know.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I'm saying? We the viewer.
I think that's a good point.
So I struggle to figure out where to get into this.
Now, Will, are you saying DW deserved to be punched? Is that what you're doing for this?
Absolutely not. That is not what I'm saying at all. Arthur, I just want to get that out there, and thank you for, steering me in that direction. Arthur overreacted. DW did not deserve to be punched. However, I do think that DW's punishment should have been made known to us because from just watching it as an observer, it really looks like, Arthur got punished, and he's made to be basically a pariah by his friends who are completely shocked that he would punch his little sister, and rightfully so. But DW, who was seen to be, getting on Arthur's nerves, like touching the plane, touching his paint, and like all of this stuff, and for her to basically come out of it scot-free kind of doesn't sit well with me. You know what I mean? It's at least that we're aware of, and if we didn't see it on screen, then it didn't happen.
Right? Maybe this is like a Star Wars prequels case of like Obi-Wan and Anakin are such good friends, because we don't see it on screen, but that happened. But I don't know. It just didn't bother me as much.
It's just that the point of this episode, like one of the big things, is that obviously it's telling like violence is not the answer. And it was wrong for Arthur to do that, which is right. But it's hard to unsee the fact that DW didn't have any consequences for what she did, which was also wrong. She apologizes later, to be fair, but it just kind of sticks with me in a bad way, and it's hard to let that go because as the episode goes on, everybody brings up to Arthur of just like, wow, you did the wrong, like, Arthur, that was terrible. You shouldn't have done that. And Arthur's like, nobody even sees my side of the story. And Muffy says, because you're wrong.
Well, but that's true. Like, again, I feel like imagine you're telling this story to someone else, right? Like the exact same tale of events that happened to Arthur. They're still not going to take your side. They're going to just say you were wrong straight up, and they're not going to see the gray in the situation. Like, and it's true. This episode is really effective at making DW really super duper annoying. Throughout the episode, like, I think the part where I reached my breaking point was when she was touching the wet paint. And it's like, that doesn't benefit her. It doesn't benefit Arthur. It's bad for everybody involved. It was annoying. I wanted to hit DW, but I didn't. And that's the important difference is I think this episode had to make a statement where in the way they refused to punish DW and in the way that all of Arthur's friends unequivocally come down upon Arthur negatively, I think they didn't really have the room in this episode or in this medium of a kids show for the nuance conversation of, DW was being really annoying and she should have known that it was going to elicit a negative reaction. But on the other hand, Arthur shouldn't have punched her. I feel like when it comes to kids' TV, you only have room for the don't punch people conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just wanted to make sure to represent that because A, it's how I feel, and B, I've seen a lot of people, like, especially on, say, like the TV tropes entry for Arthur, of just, like, bringing this up as something that has bothered a lot of people, and it bothered me too. So I wanted to be sure that we talked about it a little bit. But at the end of the day, Arthur definitely shouldn't have punched DW. That's not what's being argued here. This also ties into Binky. This episode is a lot more of a Binky episode than I remembered it being, because throughout the episode as well, Binky has a through line of, he says he's shocked that Arthur hit his sister, which leads to a conversation of the tough customers. It's Rattles, Molly, and then the brown dog kid. I don't know if we get a name from him. And they're kind of trying to remember the last time Binky hit somebody, because their idea is that, of course, Binky's hit somebody. He's hit dozens of people, but they can't exactly remember anything. My favorite is the dog kid, because he's like Binky's hype man. So he's got some great lines about how great Binky is and how they shouldn't question him. My favorite one is he says that Binky's afraid of no one is a well-known factoid.
Binky doesn't have to remind us of his past glorious fights.
Yes. It's so good. It's so toady-ish.
Everybody's toady-ish. Binky, when Binky's like, I, for one, am shocked, that's just a great line as well, early on in the episode.
How could you be shocked about someone hitting someone? So eventually it comes down to the fact that, the dog kid says that he could sock the very next kid who turns the corner, and of course it turns out to be Arthur. So
great
Binky
comedic timing on this reveal, too. He's like, he could sock the next kid walking by, and Arthur comes by, he's, whistling. He's walking like John Lennon in that one picture with, his legs really wide apart. Arthur's just begging to be punched at this point.
And he doesn't, because, as he says, he doesn't feel like it. But then Molly lays down the law of the next time you see this kid, you sock him. So the next time he sees Arthur, he has to hit him. So Binky's idea is that if he never sees Arthur again, he doesn't have to hit him. So he's being peer pressured into this, but finds a somewhat dubious workaround. So we get this whole montage of Binky desperately trying not to look at Arthur. And all of Binky's and Arthur's friends are interpreting this as how Binky is so ashamed of Arthur that he can't even look at him for what he did to DW. So he goes around with a book over his head, or around his head, so it's blocking his peripheral vision, so he doesn't see him. And then finally makes it through a day of school, and it's just like, I made it through a whole day without seeing Arthur. Now I just have the rest of my life. Eventually, it ends up that Binky's with the tough customers, and he's like, I never saw that Arthur kid, or that glasses kid, I should say. So I never really had to hit him. But then, of course, Arthur runs up to him and kind of has his pencil that he dropped when he was walking kind of sideways. And so Arthur is again, you mentioned begging to be hit. It's just Arthur. It's a shot of Arthur holding his pencil with just the most unassuming smile on his face. And Binky just sweats over it for a while. Then he rears back and punches Arthur in the shoulder.
Again, not showing us the actual punch itself, just sort of a cocking back, hard cut to Arthur on the ground.
Binky cocks the fist, slams his fist on the ground.
Oh, no.
Ooh-ah! Superman punch. The tough customers are satisfied that Binky hit somebody, but he walks away in what seems to be shame, and Arthur's shoulder is in pain. He eventually gets it iced at home, and this is kind of where we hammer home the moral of this, as Arthur is getting the ice on his arm. It's just I'd felt embarrassing. All this kind of stuff, and Dad says, well, now you know how DW felt, and Arthur's like, yeah, but that's DW. Binky Barnes is huge, so kind of hinting at the size disparity between the two by illustrating Arthur with the biggest 8-year-old out there versus Arthur with DW, making the size differences at least a little bit comparable.
Also, okay, so Arthur's getting his arm iced.
Yes.
But then they wrap it with bandages. Is that necessary? Yeah. Doesn't he have a bruise at worst?
Yeah, probably.
Even if he dislocated, what's going on here?
I can't tell you that there. I mean, unless Binky has really sharp knuckles.
Oh my god.
And he
Binky hit him with the Wolverine knuckles.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess since we talked about, part of the moral of the episode earlier, so the way this wraps around, of course, is that Arthur does know how he made DW feel when he punched her, and they both kind of apologize to each other. And as I said, to be fair, DW does apologize for breaking his plane. Although she goes what kind of a plane doesn't fly? And Arthur's a model plane? And she's like, I don't know that. I'm only 4. I'm like, yeah, all right. So
there's that political science degree at its work.
Yeah, she charisma checked her way out of that one. This is the other problem that I have with the message, and maybe we can get into this a little bit. So the problem here began with violence. Arthur punched DW, and so became an outcast among his friends, and which led to, in turn, him getting punched. So in a way that I don't think they intended, like, Arthur learns a lesson because of violence. So they essentially solve a problem of violence with more violence. Arthur only understands when he gets hit. He's not made to understand through, like, empathy or what have you.
I mean, him getting hit does give him empathy for the situation, but I understand what you mean.
And they do kind of have a potential point here with, like, he says Binky Barnes is huge. Binky Barnes to Arthur to DW, but I feel like it could have been made clearer, especially for kids. Like, that's the only kind of talking point. Then after that, they apologize. The bottom line here is I think that there's a better way to make a point about why physical violence is not the answer to disagreements. And I feel like the message of this episode is muddled at best. And that's how I feel. Lucas, you've kind of your opinion, I think, is not as kind of in the middle as mine is, I think. I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything.
Well, yeah, it's if we're getting into final judgments, I guess we might as well start with Arthur's big hit.
Sorry, I don't mean to rush us into there. We just got a little bit more of episode left. I can get through it really quick.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. The rest of the episode is just Arthur going to Binky. He says thank you, which Binky is surprised by. I did like at the end here, the tough customers come up to Arthur and they say, it's the kid who got hit by Binky and lived. As if Binky's like, what? As if Binky's one punch man himself.
I know, they're still keeping up this Binky facade. Like, we've learned multiple times that Binky has never assaulted, but with the exception of Arthur in this episode, Binky has never laid a hand on someone in his life, yet he's still keeping up this tough guy facade, which I think is a fun detail.
Yeah, the tough customers are still scared of him because he forcibly defounds the tough customers. He does it under the guise of any club that makes you do something you don't want to do is dumb, and then threatens everybody. Like, you want to make something out of it. So the end of the episode is all five of them going off to the Sugar Bowl to have like a milkshake or something, but not as the tough customers, as just friends. So, yeah, tough customers defunct as of now. Or are they? I guess we'll have to wait and find out. All right, so that's the end of the episode. Let's go against formula a little bit. Let's talk about Arthur's big hit first off. So, Lucas, you were kind of getting into it a little bit there. I'd love to hear what you thought of the episode as a whole and also of the message.
Well, I think so. Arthur's big hit, I think I was excited for it, and my expectations were kind of lowered by Library Card, because Library Card is you want to talk about this combination of episodes is a very emotional whiplash in terms of the stakes Arthur episodes can have. They go from not being able to write your name properly to physical violence, and so I think Arthur's big hit, I was in the right state of mind for it. Really liked the creative opening. And I think it's a funny episode throughout, given the serious subject matter. But I do see what you're saying about how Arthur didn't really learn about violence except after it was perpetuated against him. But I also think that that's sometimes the way things work out and in real life. And I see, looking at it here, dissecting it, Arthur doesn't really learn the message the right way, but the goal, I think, is for the viewer in itself to learn the message the right way. And you've sort of spoken against that argument already as well in saying that, well, the viewer doesn't see how DW is punished whatsoever, which is a good point. But I still, it's tricky because it is such a difficult topic, and I have a feeling that they were very limited in what they could do with this episode. There's a very conscious effort to avoid showing any sort of the actual violence taking place. So they definitely had to come on hard and fast about anytime someone talks about someone getting punched, unless it's the tough customers, they have to be talking about it in a negative light. But I don't know. As a whole, in terms of entertainment value, I really enjoyed the episode. I thought it was a fun episode. The moral kind of falls apart when put under scrutiny, but it's certainly an entertaining watch. Both of these episodes flew by.
That's definitely true. For better or worse, no matter what I feel, but if this was a brisk watch, and it's hard to almost understand why, but I guess that's just the pacing of it all. Okay, so I've kind of got into my feelings on Arthur's big hit in there. It's very interesting to kind of view this post, the apex of the meme, and it seems to be really remembered for not just the image of Arthur's fist, but also I feel like everybody does remember, that's the episode where Arthur hits DW. So that's really kind of a watershed moment of the show. It's that's something, if you've seen the show, you don't forget. And I guess the quote-unquote politics of the show aside for this episode, the moment itself and, leading up to it, it still is very good, very tense. I mentioned, I was getting anxious watching it, and I'm 27 years old. I know what's going to happen. I've seen this before, but it taps into that anxiety that I felt as a kid, and I think that's worth being celebrated. It's also got a lot going for it. It's a Binky episode, which is great. I love Binky. It gives more room to the tough customers, which I think are always fun side characters, especially these three. I feel like you could have given Rattles more to say, but that's okay.
You could always give Rattles more to say.
Absolutely, you could. I wonder if we'll hear from him again. I really hope so. And I think you made a great point in that there's only so much with the topic of physical violence that they could show and that they could do for the channel they were on, the audience they were writing for. So I imagine that what they had to do was a tight wire act that would have been hard for a lot of writers. So I don't want to come down on them wholly for what they did. I don't think that it was accomplished in the way that they wanted or intended. I feel like things could have been better. But as an educational piece, I've seen better in terms of de-stressing physical violence and that sort of thing. As an artistic piece, as an episode, I think this is the more I talk about it, the more that this is good.
Oh yeah.
So it's funny how the meat of the episode, the hit and everything, and teaching about it is not great. Everything around it is really good. So I guess I'm kind of two minds. We're gonna have to let this sit a little bit more since we've talked about it. But I think that's the mark of an important episode. It makes you think about it years and years after it aired. 1999. So that's nearly 20 years ago. No, excuse me. Nearly 20 years ago. So crazy how this still has cultural cash even now. Really quick about DW's library card. I didn't like it. There were some cute parts. I liked the imaginations because they were really out there. I'm glad you brought up Terry Gilliam. There is a bit of a Gilliam-ness to this. Great ad there with Brazil. And some of the lines were funny, but it especially compared with Arthur's big hit, it seemed pretty low stakes and didn't really do much for me as an adult. I guess I'd have to be more in the kids' state of mind to get more out of this one.
I think it's also a factor of, it's kind of a product of the pairing. I don't think Library Card was a good match with Big Hit. We should start treating these Arthur episodes, these two we watch, as basically a wine and meal pairing, the way they go together. And this one just didn't necessarily work. But I think Library Card is an episode I started out really not liking. The drama with DW and her name I couldn't get behind, but as the episode kind of changed its focus and it became more about DW trying to keep the book safe and all of that stuff, I really got a kick out of that. And it was DW's freak out when she was going to go sign her name, and sort of how she broke down in the line was really good. Again, her ripping the book in that dream sequence is just a really great moment. But besides that, the rest of this episode's pretty skippable IMO.
Yeah, I agree. And which is kind of a shame because I feel like I set myself up for this with season 3, but I took a look at the episode titles in this season. And I was like, oh boy, I can't wait for this. Like, I hyped myself up. It's like season 4 is going to be great. And so it didn't start out great, I'd say. I think in the end it started out pretty good, but I was expecting a little more. So maybe that was, I think maybe my expectations were a bit too high. So I'll have to learn to manage that, and we're gonna get into some stuff in season 4, and that I'm really excited for. So what a way to start it off with one of the most important Arthur episodes of all time, and DW's Library Card. Okay, Lucas, there it is. The Arthur Fist meme has been. That's it. That's other than putting that as our episode cover. Other than retweeting a bunch of Arthur Fist memes this week, I mean, what else is there to say?
If you hit your sister, that's terrible. That's what there's there to say. I think it's Buster who says that line, or Fern, one of the people that are giving him the gears about it.
Yeah. All right. So, Elwood City Limits, back at it once again. If you would like to interact with us as we end off the episode here, there are several ways you can do that. Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits. On Twitter, @ECL Podcast. Tumblr, send us an ask over at elwoodcitylimits.tumblr.com. You can send us an email, like Yoshi did, at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. If you would like access to exclusive audio on the weeks that we're not able to do a regular episode, and if you would like to thank us in a monetary way, patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. Become a supporter, a backer. And, of course, you can listen to us on elwoodcitylimits.libsyn.com, where the entire back catalog is. It's also on Apple Podcasts and on the Google Play Store. All right, Lucas, we're going full steam ahead into Season 4 next week. I'm wondering if any of these bring back any memories as we get closer and closer to your favorite Arthur episode.
Oh, my goodness. That's in Season 4?
It is in Season 4.
Oh, that's exciting.
So next week it's going to be Hide and Snake and Muffy's new best friend. Nothing?
No. I'm trying to think. If Muffy's new best friend is what I think it is, it'll be a fun time. Hide and Snake, on the other hand, nothing.
All right. Well, we'll have to see how we feel about that when we get there. Thanks for joining us. If you have any thoughts on this episode, we would love to hear it, and I really hope that you come back with us the next time. I said next week, but hey, it could be any time. So that's why, being on the Patreon's so good, just in case we miss a week. You don't have to miss a week without us at all. Or maybe you're just waiting for us to take a break again. I don't know. My name's Will Young. Thanks again for joining us for Elwood City Limits and for Lucas Mancini.
She can't even spell D.
We'll see you. That just got me funny. We'll see you whenever, kids.
That's all for now.
Waka waka.
Woo!